Have you ever looked at a monument, something so solid, so permanent, and wondered about the secrets it holds? What if I told you that one of the world's most iconic structures, a symbol of an entire nation, was once sold for scrap? Not just once, but twice, by the very same man. This isn't fiction. It's the story of the man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Our story begins in the Roaring Twenties, a time of excess and ambition in Paris. The city was buzzing with life, a playground for the wealthy and a hunting ground for those who preyed on them. Amidst this glittering chaos moved a man of impeccable style and hypnotic charm. He called himself Count Victor Lustig, a title as fabricated as the schemes that danced in his brilliant, deceitful mind. In the spring of 1925, Lustig stumbled upon a small newspaper article that would ignite his most audacious con. The article detailed the city's struggles with the Eiffel Tower. Built for the 1889 World's Fair, it was never meant to be permanent. Now it was a rusting, dilapidated giant, and the cost of its maintenance was becoming a monumental headache for the Parisian government. The papers speculated that the city might even consider demolishing it. For most Parisians, this was a passing piece of news, a topic of café chatter. For Victor Lustig, it was a symphony of opportunity. He saw not a pile of aging iron, but a mountain of gold. The plan that began to form in his mind was so bold, so outrageously impossible, that only a true master of deception could even conceive of it. Lustig immediately set his plan into motion. First, he needed a new identity, one that radiated authority and power. He commissioned the creation of exquisite forgeries, official government stationery, complete with embossed seals and flawless letterheads. He was no longer Victor Lustig, the charming con artist. He was now Monsieur Dannard, the Deputy Director General of the Ministère de Postes et Télégraphes, the government body responsible for the tower. With his new identity secured, Monsieur Dannard sent out discreet, formal invitations to the 5 most prominent scrap metal dealers in Paris. The letters were masterpieces of official ambiguity, hinting at a lucrative and highly confidential government contract. The meeting was to be held in a lavish suite at the Hôtel de Crillon, one of the most prestigious and opulent hotels in the city, a place where secrets were whispered and fortunes were made and lost. The 5 dealers, their curiosity piqued by the official-looking summons, arrived at the hotel expecting a routine business discussion. They were met by a man who commanded the room with an air of quiet confidence and authority. Lustig, in his role as a high-ranking government official, was utterly convincing. He spoke of the overwhelming financial burden the Eiffel Tower had become, the political sensitivity of its potential removal, and the need for absolute discretion. He explained that the government had made the difficult decision to dismantle the iconic structure and sell it for scrap. The 7,000 tons of metal were to be sold in a secret auction to a trusted partner. He painted a picture of a nation forced to part with a symbol, emphasizing that public outcry would be immense if the news leaked prematurely. This, he stressed, was why they, the most reputable dealers in Paris, had been chosen for this sensitive task. To add a layer of authenticity to his performance, Lustig took the dealers on a tour of the Eiffel Tower. He hired a limousine and, feigning his official capacity, pointed out areas of structural weakness and decay. He spoke with the authority of an engineer, using technical jargon he had memorized, leaving the dealers utterly convinced they were part of a top-secret government operation of immense importance. The bids came in, but Lustig had already identified his perfect mark. His name was André Poisson, a man new to the Parisian business scene, eager to make a name for himself. Poisson was ambitious and, more importantly, insecure. He desperately wanted to be accepted into the inner circle of Paris's business elite, a vulnerability that Lustig recognized and prepared to exploit with surgical precision. Lustig informed Poisson that his bid was the winning one. However, he then introduced a subtle complication. With a world-weary sigh, Lustig confided in Poisson, speaking of the meager salary of a public servant and the temptations that came with overseeing such a monumental deal. He never explicitly asked for a bribe, but the implication was as clear as the crystal glasses in the Krillin. Poisson, eager to secure the deal of a lifetime and familiar with the undercurrents of corruption in business, took the bait. He saw the request for a bribe not as a red flag, but as confirmation of Lustig's authenticity. A real corrupt official would act this way. To seal the deal and grease the wheels of government, Poisson handed over a substantial cash bribe, in addition to the large sum for the tower's scrap metal itself. With a suitcase full of cash, Victor Lustig didn't wait for the ink to dry. He took the first train out of Paris, heading straight for Vienna. He laid low, checking the Parisian newspapers daily, expecting to see headlines screaming about the monumental fraud. He waited for the police to come crashing down on him, for his name to become infamous. But the days turned into weeks, and the newspapers remained silent. There was no mention of the scam, no public outcry, no police investigation. André Poisson, Lustig correctly surmised, was too humiliated to go to the authorities. To admit he had been duped so completely, to become the laughingstock of Paris, was a fate worse than losing the money. His silence was Lustig's shield. Emboldened by his success and the sweet taste of impunity, Lustig realized something incredible. If the con worked once so flawlessly, why couldn't it work again? The Eiffel Tower was still standing, a silent monument to his audacity. Just a few months later, armed with the same forged documents and the same incredible story, Victor Lustig returned to Paris. He once again assumed the identity of a beleaguered government official and sent out invitations to a new set of scrap metal dealers. He booked a suite at another luxurious hotel and spun the same tale of a government desperate to unload its costly, rusting landmark. His performance was just as polished, his confidence unwavering, his story just as believable as the first time. He found another group of eager businessmen, their eyes wide with the prospect of such a massive and historic deal. The allure of dismantling a world-famous monument and profiting from its remains was a powerful one. Lustig played his part to perfection, lamenting the difficult but necessary decision to tear down the barbaric bulk that marred the Parisian skyline. However, this time, Lustig's luck was about to run out. One of the dealers in this second group became suspicious. The deal seemed too good, the secrecy too absolute. Perhaps he had heard whispers of the first scam, or perhaps his instincts simply screamed that something was profoundly wrong. Before any money could change hands, this dealer went to the police. The moment Lustig caught wind of the investigation, he knew the game was up in Paris. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his ill-gotten gains from the first scam and fled, leaving his second set of marks empty-handed but not defrauded. He made his way to the United States, a land of new opportunities and, more importantly, a place far from the reach of the French police. In America, Lustig continued his life of crime with remarkable flair. He was a chameleon, adopting numerous aliases and perfecting new cons. One of his most famous was the Romanian money box, a device he claimed could duplicate any currency. He would demonstrate the box, which, after a 6-hour chemical process, would produce a perfect copy of a $100 bill. The secret, of course, was simple trickery. Lustig would preload the box with 1 or 2 genuine bills. The demonstration would appear successful, and he would sell the box to his gullible victims for thousands of dollars. By the time they discovered the box was just an elaborate mahogany case and could produce nothing but what was already inside, Lustig was long gone. His reputation for elaborate scams even brought him into the orbit of one of America's most notorious gangsters, Al Capone. Lustig approached Capone with a proposition, asking for a $50,000 investment in a stock scheme, promising to double it in 60 days. Lustig, however, simply put Capone's money in a safe deposit box and did nothing. After 2 months, he returned to Capone, full of apologies, claiming the deal had fallen through. He handed back the original $50,000. Capone, who had expected Lustig to either run with the money or return with a profit, was impressed by his apparent honesty. "I know you're a con man," Capone reportedly said, "but you seem to be an honest one." As a reward for his integrity, Capone gave Lustig $5,000. That had been Lustig's true goal all along. But Lustig's web of deceit was becoming too large and tangled. He had made enemies, and law enforcement agencies across the country were beginning to connect the dots between his various aliases and crimes. The U.S. Secret Service, in particular, was closing in on him for a large-scale counterfeiting operation he was running. The breakthrough for the authorities came not from a clever detective, but from a jealous lover. Lustig's mistress, tired of his infidelities, made an anonymous phone call to the federal authorities, tipping them off to his whereabouts. The net that had been closing for years finally tightened around him. In May 1935, federal agents cornered Victor Lustig in New York City. Even in his capture, he displayed a cool, almost theatrical demeanor. He was arrested and taken to the Federal House of Detention in New York. But for a man like Lustig, even a prison cell was just another puzzle to be solved. The day before his trial, Lustig staged a daring escape that would have made Houdini proud. He fashioned a rope from bedsheets, broke through his cell window, and rappelled down the side of the building in broad daylight. He nonchalantly dusted off his clothes and vanished into the city crowds, leaving the authorities stunned and humiliated. His freedom, however, was short-lived. Just 27 days later, he was recaptured in Pittsburgh after a dramatic car chase. This time there would be no escape. The legal system, now thoroughly embarrassed, was determined to ensure that the man who sold the Eiffel Tower would finally face justice for his lifetime of deception. Victor Lustig was tried and convicted for his counterfeiting operation, the charge that finally stuck. The judge, perhaps taking into account his spectacular escape and his long, storied criminal career, sentenced him to 20 years in the most notorious prison in America, Alcatraz. Transferred to the Rock, the charismatic Count found his world shrink to the size of a cold, damp cell. The master manipulator, the man who had charmed millionaires and gangsters, was now just another inmate, stripped of his fine suits, his clever props, and his freedom. His grand stage was gone, replaced by the grim reality of prison life. Lustig would never taste freedom again. On March 9, 1947, he contracted pneumonia and died 2 days later at the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. His death certificate listed his occupation simply as apprentice salesman, a final, understated irony for one of the greatest salesmen and con men the world has ever known. The legacy of Victor Lustig is not one of simple criminality, but of breathtaking audacity. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the power of persuasion and the depths of human gullibility. He didn't use violence or weapons. His tools were charm, confidence, and an uncanny ability to understand and exploit the desires of his victims. The Eiffel Tower, of course, still stands, a beloved icon of Paris. It was never dismantled. Its 7,000 tons of iron never sold for scrap. But for a brief, incredible moment in history, a handful of men believed it was theirs for the taking, all because of the whisper of a con man. The story of the man who sold the Eiffel Tower forces us to ask an unsettling question. We look at our world, at the institutions and monuments we believe are permanent and unassailable, and we feel a sense of security. But how much of that security is real, and how much is merely an illusion, waiting for the right person with the right story to come along and sell it all away?